Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Oregon Friendly Driver live webinar. Thank you to everyone for taking the pre-test as well. We look forward to sharing this material with you today. I am Whitney Bennett. I am the Safe Routes to School coordinator at Commute Options, and I work to educate road users. The Oregon Friendly Driver program has been funded by the Oregon Department of Transportation, and the material has been put together through a partnership between us at Commute Options, the Street Trust, and the Safe Lane Transportation Coalition. At Commute Options, a few of the programs that come underneath our umbrella, in addition to the Oregon Friendly Driver program, is our Get There Rewards program, which is an excellent program that does trip matching and employee rewards at your work site. We also have a walking school bus, which is a guided group of students are walked with a leader to school. We offer a van pool service and coordination. Like I mentioned, also the Safe Routes to School program. So many different programs underneath the umbrella of Commute Options. Oregon Friendly Driver is one of them. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure people are able to make it to the places they want to go and have access to options on how to get there. So before I really dive into everything that we're going to talk about, I kind of want to just paint this picture a little bit about why it's called Oregon Friendly Driver Program and really what the overarching goal is today. So if you look at this graphic, what you see is, imagine you as a driver viewing this material today. And you as a driver, say you're driving that white car, and then you see the person on the bike, in the bike lane, going the wrong way. And if that person driving, if you continue on your route because you feel like you're in the right and you are the most legal person because you are taking a turn across a bike lane where the person on the bike is possibly riding in the bike lane the wrong way, how will this continued trip change the rest of your life, the rest of your day, and really the rest of your life upon that impact of the person on the bike? No matter who's right or wrong, ultimately your day is going to really be destroyed, and likely that person on the bike will never be able to live their life like they have from prior to this incident. So the idea and the intent with what we're covering today is much bigger than what is a legal driver, but it really is how can we avoid ruining people's lives, killing people on the roadways, no matter who's at fault. And the idea is 0 deaths on our roadways, and we want to take it a step above of just being legal, but really stepping into this place of protecting our roadways and really being conscious Oregon-friendly drivers. So our material today is going to be all about that, that kind of deeper dive into what it means to be a responsible, friendly driver, and what it means to really create safe roadways for all to use. So what we're going to cover today is why crashes happen between you as a driver and with the other users on the roadway. We're going to talk about it in the form of what is and is not friendly, because ultimately, like I said, it's beyond just what's legal. It's really, we want to use this term friendly because we want less people to be impacted on the roadways. We want less people to die. And the goal of this program is to help to increase your awareness and how you can achieve that. We'll talk about infrastructure that's available for the vulnerable users so that you as a driver know how to interact with that infrastructure and know what to expect so that you can avoid, the last subtopic of our discussion will be those common crashes and how to avoid them. Okay. So you'll hear my verbiage really be not just about a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or a cyclist, but really about a human being. So we're going to talk about people. People walk, people bike, and people drive. And really, we are all people, and the goal is to try to keep people alive. And people use the roadways for different reasons, and sometimes they have minimal options on how they're going to get from one point to the other, and they're doing the best they can. So we just all want to make sure everyone makes it home at the end of the day. Another word that you're going to hear, which as coming from the world that we're all in right now, this may be really familiar, but I really just like to emphasize the term crash and why we use it instead of the word accident. So by definition, the word accident is really an unforeseen and unplanned event or circumstance, whereas a traffic crash is due to human error. And whether it's because of an impaired driving or distracted driving, speeding, we are very well aware of the implications of these errors or these not following what we know is the best way to drive. Therefore, the consequences is not an accident. They're just straight crashes. And we try to make sure that our language represents that so that we can really embody these concepts. So what we're looking at in this slide is the leading causes of crashes. And you will see a really huge emphasis on the interface between people driving and people on bikes. A little bit more than people walking, just because of that really close proximity of the people on bikes to people driving, because the people on bikes will be in the roadway with people driving. So there's just more likelihood of these crashes to happen. Therefore, we bring a little bit more emphasis into that part. So the leading cause of a crash for a right turn for a car is a right turn in front of a bike. And then you go down the list into the least leading cause, which is the person's driving not at fault, which takes us over to the fault of the person on the bike. Most common is wrong way riding, as I showed you in that first graphic and as we will revisit. But this does happen. And just to point out here that as it is the fault of the person on the bike for that leading cause of a crash, which would be wrong way riding, the person on the bike is much more likely to end up dead in that crash than the person driving. As a person driving, you're containerized in a huge amount of metal and protection, and you may have some serious exterior damage to your car from hitting a person on a bike, but that's nothing compared to what's going to happen to the person on the bike. And ultimately, we do not want people to die. We want people to make it home at the end of the day. And so to be a friendly driver, we want to be aware of these common crashes, and so to help avoid getting into these kind of situations. So there is what is known as the vulnerable user, and legally in Oregon we have ways of protecting the vulnerable user. And as an Oregon-friendly driver, you'll be very aware of what's out there and choices and awareness that you need to have in order to make sure people stay safe, and these are the vulnerable users. So a vulnerable user is a person walking, a person riding a horse, a person on a tractor. You can probably think of many times you've been out driving and seen a vulnerable user out and about, whether they're on a bike or any other kind of wheel, possibly in a wheelchair or in a mobility device, utility workers, highway workers. There are other users on the roadway that as a friendly driver, you're going to be responsible for just really noticing and trying to anticipate where and how they're going to be interacting on the roadway so that everyone can make it home at the end of the day. So talking about people on bikes, when a person on a bike is in the roadway, sharing the roadway with you as a person driving, they are to be treated as just as a person driving. So they are required to follow almost all of the laws that a person driving is required. There are some exceptions, and we'll touch on those, but as long as the person on the bike is sharing that roadway, they really need to be interacting similar to you as a person driving. And that will help you to understand how to read and communicate with the person on the bike. And another huge point with this is people that are on bikes on the road are there for various reasons. In many cases, that is their chosen form of transportation and how they're going to get from point A to point B, just like you as a person driving have a form of transportation that's in a car. So they do have the right to share that space. Often the person on a bike also has a car, and so they're paying probably the same amount of taxes and various things in order to have access to that service. So it is valuable to share it with the person on the bike. There's many other reasons people could be using a bike to get places. They could be exercising or recreating, but no matter what, they're humans, and we want to try to make sure everyone makes it home at the end of the day. So here is our first poll. And what you're looking at here is that same intersection. And we have you as the person driving here in the white car, taking a left-hand turn, and the person on the bike is wrong way riding. So my question to you as I release this poll is the person in the white car acting as a friendly driver or not? So you have about 25 seconds to provide a response here. I'll give you about 5 more seconds and then I'm going to close the poll. Good. And I think I can share the results. So it's kind of a split, and it is kind of tricky because what we're looking at is no matter what, let's see, what's going to happen here is the person driving, if they continue on their path, they're going to end up in a crash with the person on the bike right here. As a friendly driver, we want to foresee situations like this and avoid them, so it is not friendly to continue on your path. Whether or not the person on the bike is doing a legal or illegal action is not really the focus of what we're trying to get at here today. It really is how can we avoid that person on the bike from ending up in the hospital. And so to be a friendly driver, you would not take that turn, but you would wait for the person on the bike to make it through the intersection and then continue on your way. And ideally, some point the person on the bike gets the memo that wrong way riding is not safe or legal. And a side note on wrong way riding, which is important to emphasize here, is it happens for a lot of reasons. There's often patterns that we have from our youth that maybe we walked opposite traffic. So when you get on a bike, the assumption is that you're going to pop into the bike lane and go against traffic. So that could be an easy oversight as people begin to ride. They could be on the opposite side of the road and are needing to get into a driveway. So there's oftentimes when there isn't another option, although it is not allowed, it can happen. And we just want to make sure that we act as a friendly driver in situations like this and hope that eventually the person on the bike will be taught that wrong way riding is not safe. And then something also as a friendly driver to be aware of is when visibility is low, you may have other users out there on the road. So it is required for people on bikes to have a front white light visible from 500 feet, and also a rear red light a rear red reflector that is visible from 600 feet. But things happen, and often we can forget our lights at home, or batteries might go out, or you may have switched bikes. I've done this, I've switched bikes, left my light on my other bike, and then been out at night and in one of our short winter days in Oregon, and then you don't have a bike light. So the intent here with showing this is that as a friendly driver, when visibility is low, either just before sunrise or just slightly after sunrise, really, and just after sunset, or when it's raining or when it's snowing, like it was actually doing here in Central Oregon a few hours ago, visibility may be low, and so it's important to be on the lookout for any other users that might be sharing the road. And what we've got here is the next topic. It's about passing a person on a bike. So you're looking at a graphic where in this specific example, there is no bike lane and the speed limits are 35 miles per hour or above, all right? In this instance, as a legal and as a friendly driver, you are required to provide fall distance, which is the amount of space that person on the bicycle will take up if they were to fall. So you have to kind of do some quick math and think about the height of the bike, the height of that person, and give that person that much space. That said, you are allowed, permitted to cross the center line and use the opposite lane of traffic to pass and to provide that fall distance, as long as that opposite lane of traffic is free and clear of any oncoming vehicles, right? And if it is not free and clear, then you will drop back behind until it is free and clear, or the person on the bike maybe moves off the road, takes a turn. So as a friendly driver, ultimately you want to give as much space as possible. Wind speeds are under 35 miles per hour, that distance is less, and it varies based on where you are, but ultimately as a friendly driver, you want to give them as much space as possible. A rule of thumb in some urban areas is 3 feet, but really working to try to make it a safe passing situation, because depending on your speeds, the wind blast from your car, and if you have a truck, can significantly throw a person on a bike off. And so you really want to make sure that you're not causing that person on the bike to do anything dangerous and resulting in a crash. That brings us to another poll. So just when you're starting to kind of feel like, you know, you're being left out, we get a second chance here. So I'm going to close this one. All right. So right here, hold on, let me see if I can find my poll. Oh, here we go. Okay. So what we're looking at is a person on a bike on the right-hand side of the road is being passed by a person driving. So my question to you is the person driving friendly or not? I'm going to give you another 20 seconds to get your vote in for if the person driving is passing in a friendly manner or not. All right, really great. There's sharing those results. You can see everyone agrees this is a friendly maneuver. And yes, so the person driving the trailer, even with as it's a big vehicle, is definitely giving adequate space to the person on the bike to avoid a big wind blast and to avoid making the person on the bike feel like they're being squeezed into the shoulder of the road. So something often that not everyone is familiar with, but riding on the sidewalk is actually something that is allowed by people on bicycles in many areas across Oregon. Side note here that there are many business districts, downtown areas that do not permit riding on the sidewalk. So it's important to be able to, as a person riding a bike, should be paying attention to where they are allowed to or not. Often this is posted. That said, there are often people riding bikes on sidewalks that as a person driving, we need to be aware of this, because they can, one, be crossing over a driveway, and that can be dangerous because the visibility is low. They can also be leaving that sidewalk at any time, and you want to be aware if you see a person on a bike on the sidewalk, anticipate they could possibly enter the roadway. When a person on a bike is riding on the sidewalk, they are required to go with the flow of pedestrian traffic. They are required to really slow their speed down. That's the rules, and not always followed, but it's a slightly unpredictable area. So as a friendly driver, you just need to keep your eyes open and notice when there are those vulnerable users up on the sidewalk, and plan on letting them pass by before you cross over or pull out. So the next, we'll have some crash scenarios that kind of go into that show why it could be slightly dangerous. But what we're going for next is the new stop as yield law. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because I'd actually rather skip on to the next one, which actually provides a video for you for your viewing pleasure.
People ride bikes for all kinds of reasons: exercise, fun, and of course, getting from point A to point B efficiently. That's where Oregon's new Stop as Yield law comes in. It allows a person riding a bike to keep some momentum at an intersection while checking for oncoming traffic. Just like it sounds, they're treating that stop as a yield, while all the rules of right of way still apply. This rolling stop helps make the ride more efficient and improves the flow of traffic. The law is new, but one thing still remains constant: we all need to look out for each other. It's how Oregonians stand out. People ride bikes for.
There we go. So the reason why we wanted to share the stop as yield law with you is because it's, again, a way for you as a person driving and a friendly driver to anticipate how a person on a bike may be approaching an intersection. Of course, if there are people waiting at that intersection with a stop sign, the person on the bike is required to come to a full stop. But if people are out on not quite at that intersection, you may anticipate a yield from a person on a bike. So I invite you now to kind of use your own hands. This really helps to bring it into understanding how people on bicycles may be communicating with you as a person driving. If you've ever had a car where the blinker's gone out, you've actually had to use these as well. I recall this being in my driving test back when I was 16 years old. So they're really important to use. They are not always used, unfortunately, but there's lots of reasons why that is. So often a person on a bike may feel uncomfortable pulling one hand off to indicate a turn. They may have a hill to climb or a downhill. There may be snow or ice or rain coming down. So these can be reasons why a person on a bike would not use a hand signal to communicate with you as a person driving. But you can also look for other indications that they're going to be maybe changing lanes or taking a turn. Often they'll do a shoulder check and look behind. Often they will make eye contact. I teach students to use their voice just as much as their hands. And you might be able to hear things if there's an opportunity. If there's windows down, it's a nice day, and you actually hear the person on the bike indicating they're going to turn. So these are things to look out for, but just to kind of practice it. When a person on a bike takes their left hand and actually bends that elbow, so you're welcome to do this if you're kind of feeling like you need to move, if you've been sitting on your desk for a while, but you kind of take your arm out, hand up, and you actually would, even more helpful is to point in the direction that you're turning. So that's a right hand turn. It's more visible using your outside hand than it is to use the inside hand, depending on where that person on the bike is placed. If you're driving and say you have more maybe the person on the bike has a greater visibility, they might be indicating a right hand turn with the extension of their right arm. The person on the bike ideally will pick out the best one to help you see and know where they're going. The left hand turn is the left arm actually extending out, and a point is really helpful. And then not used as often as it should be, but the bent elbow on the left hand side with the hand down is the stop. And because the person on a bike doesn't have brake lights, doesn't have blinkers, this is their signal to you as a person driving. So as a friendly driver, you'll just keep your eyes peeled for these types of communications and alternative ones as well, so that you can interact with the person on the bike in a safe way. The next thing we're looking at is the rule about improper opening or leaving open of a vehicle door. This is the concept of being doored. And as a person that does ride a bike but also drives a car, I know it is definitely a fear of someone opening a door, taking you out, and having you fly across the sidewalk. So there's a better way. There's a really easy way to avoid this with really little thought, and it's really about remapping how you exit your car when you've parked. So if you have parked your car and you're going to leave your car, exit your car, you're the driver, you're going to use your right hand first. So you can kind of like move your right hand and really get this into your motor skills. And you're actually going to reach with your right hand to open your door. When you do that, your whole view really expands, and you can actually see if anybody's coming, someone walking, someone rolling. And it really helps avoid this kind of taking out of a person on a bike. And helps everyone get home at the end of the day without too many battle wounds. We'll touch on this too on a later slide on how it would work from the other side. So now we're going to step into the infrastructure section, and important to highlight here in this section we'll start with some pedestrian people walking infrastructure. We'll talk about some biking infrastructure, but generally speaking, the challenge with infrastructure is kind of where we have how it's transitioned over our life, over the decades. So we'll go back, I mean, hundreds, kind of long span of history where it started. When we all started, many people on horses and walking, and really engineered and infrastructure was designed, or the built environment, I should say, was designed around that mode of transportation. Fast forward to the 1950s, and the automobile became the dominant means of transportation, and so infrastructure became designed around automobiles. Mixed in between there were still people walking, still people biking, and still transit, but it slowly got less focus, and also depending on the areas where people wanted to go and where the money was being, or the nicer towns were being built, that really helped to influence how things were engineered historically. So unfortunately, people that are on riding bikes and walking and using transit end up having to cross the infrastructure designed for cars more often than is safe. And that is why we really need to kind of broaden our acceptance of sharing these routes in order to allow for everybody to be able to efficiently get where they need to go and move about our environment. So infrastructure can look a lot of ways, look differently in lots of areas. There can be amazing infrastructure and there can be lack of infrastructure. We're looking at right there in this picture just a really huge roadway with very or no paint to help indicate or really guide even a person driving as to where they need to be on this road, and definitely not very clear wayfinding for, you can see the people crossing at the intersection. And having no point of reference makes it for a pretty unsafe environment for all users. And you can see in the pictures on the right-hand side, we've got a lack of space for a person on a bike to be on this roadway. And I like these two examples at the bottom. So infrastructure really can apply to things as big as bridges, and we'll say pedestrian bridges, or as simple as paint on the road. And in the bottom graphic, there is a crosswalk painted, but it kind of is disconnected. So there's no wayfinding once you get off that crosswalk. It doesn't lead to a sidewalk. It really just leads to more paint that doesn't have any direction. And then again, on the photo that's here on the right, it is a bike lane where the paint has worn off. So it makes it more challenging for the people that are using, that are biking or walking, to really make sure that they know their boundaries. So as a friendly driver, being aware of these challenges will help you to interact on the roadways in a more safer way with the other users. Again, a couple examples where the infrastructure would be compromised by weather, and where this kind of situation may require a person walking, where here is a disconnected sidewalk. You can see the picture on the left-hand side, and so they could be walking on that sidewalk and then really have just this kind of gravelly washed out area, which is tempting to just shift onto the gravelly washed out bike lane, which can then impact a person on a bike that might be trying to use that bike lane. So there's challenges for vulnerable users that can bring them closer to you as a person driving. And in order to be a friendly driver, it's best to anticipate anything that could happen and avoid getting into a crash with these vulnerable users if they are merging and pushing those boundaries. So now we're going to talk about infrastructure specifically for people walking. And what we're looking at in Oregon, every corner is a crosswalk. So what that means, whether it's marked or unmarked, where there's a intersection of streets, you are required to stop for people that are indicating they want to cross the street. And what the law says is a person that's walking is required to indicate this by putting a foot, a hand, a cane, a wheel, or something to show intent to cross. And when that happens, as long as it is safe for you to stop, you would stop and allow that person walking to cross the street. And as a friendly driver, you would wait for that person walking to cross the street all the way to the other side to allow for that person, that vulnerable user, to feel much more comfortable as they're crossing that roadway. And you'll notice here, I'm going to point to this graphic on the right-hand side. We have a truck that has stopped for the pedestrian. We also have a person on a bike that has also stopped for that pedestrian. So as you see, the person on the bike is obeying the same laws as the person driving because they are on that roadway, and that is what they are required to do, is to stop for a person walking, just like a vehicle would. So a really big intersection. The point of showing this is this too would be a legal crosswalk. It's not an amazing place to cross. But if you look down that roadway, there really is not another place for crossing to happen. So someone may really need to get to that Shell station to go buy a bag of chips and then run back home. So there could be people walking and trying to cross here. So as a friendly driver, you'll be aware and allow those people to make that crossing in a safe and comfortable way. This is an example of a more clear piece of infrastructure, which is the marked crosswalk. The stripes can look different in various places, but this is indicating a place for a person walking to cross. And again, as you see, the people on the bicycles are also stopped behind the crosswalk, just like the people that are driving, to allow for the person walking to cross. Just a summary of the different types of crosswalks that we may see in Oregon, including the marked crosswalks, the mid-block crosswalks, and unmarked crosswalks. And we'll go into the mid-block crosswalk a little bit, talking about the rapid flashing beacon. So some things I wanted to note for the rapid flashing beacon: as a friendly driver, when you see the light flashing, you would stop behind the white line as this graphic is indicating here. One thing to note about rapid flashing beacons is that people walking are not always aware that they need to hit the button to get the lights to flash. So as a friendly driver, if you see a person approaching a rapid flashing beacon crossing, you would stop and allow the people to cross, even if they do not hit the button to make the light flash. So just to be aware. Now, legally, as a person driving, you can see this truck would need to wait for the person walking to get to the center island in this case. As a friendly driver, we're really asking you to go above and beyond and allow that person walking to get all the way across the street before continuing on your journey. So an example, what we're looking at here is the requirement for people that are driving, where a friendly driver does not pass a stopped vehicle at a crosswalk. So when a vehicle has stopped at a crosswalk, as you see here with this white car, has stopped to allow for the person walking to cross at the crosswalk, it is not friendly and also against the law to pass a stopped car. So this truck passing this stopped car is not being a friendly driver. The reason being is that their visibility is not, they don't have full visibility of the crosswalk, and so they would not see a person crossing that is in front of the stopped car and could easily get in, run over the person crossing the street. But this is really important to emphasize, not just with cars, but with buses even more so, because of how big they are, and they will they will stop at a crosswalk. And they could be stopped at a crosswalk to let pedestrians cross. They could be stopped at a crosswalk letting people out of the bus, and pedestrians could be crossing the street. So it's very important to not be passing any type of car that has stopped at a crosswalk. So in this example, again, just checking back in to make sure we're all kind of feeling like you get to be part of it. I'm going to give another poll, and what you're looking at here is the truck that has stopped at this point of the intersection, on the bottom of the intersection, and we have a pedestrian crossing. My question to you is, the person driving the truck acting as a friendly driver or not? And I will give you I'll give you about 30 seconds to respond to that poll. Got about 3 more seconds. All right, so sharing those results. So we're almost, yeah, so some were on board with it not being friendly, and we got some going with friendly. So let me stop sharing that. What we're looking at is the truck is crept into the crosswalk. And so what that is going to cause is the person walking is going to have to go into the intersection to go around the front of the truck, which will be hazardous, and to make it to the other side of the road. So to be a friendly driver, you would stop at the crosswalk. You may move slightly into the crosswalk if you're about to turn, and to make sure it's safe to turn, but you wouldn't creep into the crosswalk until that crosswalk is free of people walking. So you would wait for people walking to make it all the way across, and then you may creep into the crosswalk to make sure it's safe for you to turn. But you always will stop initially at the white line prior to the crosswalk. We'll dive into some infrastructure for people biking, some that's pretty familiar to many of us, and some that may be new to you, or maybe something that you are aware of. So this one, a familiar one, the bike lane. Bike lanes can look beautiful, like this one in downtown Bend, nice fresh paints, pretty clear to you as a driver that you might see a person biking alongside in this bike lane. And then often it can more so look like what's here in the center photo, where it used to be a very clearly marked bike lane, but maybe that paint over time has worn. We get really diverse weather across the board in Oregon, and so this paint can definitely break down over time. So it's important to know as a friendly driver that it may not be clearly marked, but this is infrastructure present for people that are biking, and anticipate that if there may be vulnerable users in this infrastructure. This becomes relevant in terms of what we see in the graphic on the right-hand side. So you can see when you pull out of a driveway that crosses a bike lane, as a friendly driver, you want to make sure that there is not a bike in the bike lane. So for example, the truck pulling out of the driveway here, as a friendly driver, would have checked the bike lane to make sure it was clear before pulling out, because by not doing it, there's going to end up being a crash right here at that driveway entrance. Secondly, the person in the white car taking the left-hand turn also, as a friendly driver, should have checked to make sure it was clear before taking that turn. Another thing to note about bike lanes, as a person driving, anticipating how they may be interacting in the bike lane, a person on a bike, often there are things in a bike lane that will cause a person in a bike to hug the left side of that bike lane, because it's not safe to stay maybe in the center of it. And that is just how roadways can be complicated and can vary. And so as a friendly driver, really anticipating that the person on the bike will either stay in that bike lane, but may either be hugging the left, or may have to merge into your lane of traffic in order to avoid hazards. So anticipating that and respecting when those transitions have to happen. An example of a bike lane in this photo, you can see it's indicated with green paint. Green paint is used for really specific bike infrastructure, but also just to call out here, like, anticipate there may be people on bikes, and that you need to be aware of that if you're going to take a right-hand turn. Here, it's really just used to highlight, because it's pretty noticeable when you see green paint. So another example on the left-hand side of a bike lane. and an example of when you as a person driving would actually need to cross over a bike lane. So as a friendly driver, you may cross over a bike lane to take a right-hand turn, as shown in this photo here. You cannot use the bike lane as a turning lane, but you may cross over it as long as it is free of a person on a bike. So you can see in the graphic on the right-hand side, when this truck is turning, it is very important to make sure that there is not a bike in the path of travel in either this bike lane or the one that is on the in the other on the road that it's going to turn on, because there's lots of potential for crashes. So as a friendly driver, you just want to be aware if you're crossing over bike lanes, make sure they are clear and before you do pass across them or make a turn. This is an example of a buffered bike lane. What the intention of the buffered bike lane really helps to make the person on the bike feel a little bit more comfortable when you're close to faster moving traffic. As a friendly driver, you want to be aware of these and know that you can cross a buffered bike lane just like the vehicle in the photograph is crossing as it pulls out of a parking space. But be aware, because it's a bike lane, there could be a person on a bike. So you just want to make sure it's clear before you cross it. What you're looking at in the graphic on the right-hand side is the truck pulling out, having not looked to make sure it's clear, and likely running into a crash incident here, but with the person on the bike. So just being aware that that is what that infrastructure is there for, and that there may be a person on a bike in it that you will need to wait until they're passed. So protected bike lanes, again, we see the green paint calling out, hey, there might be a bike here. Be aware. And this is the example that I wanted to talk about again, bring back the concept of the Dutch reach. So as in the photograph, you can see there are cars parked, and if someone was in the passenger side and opened the door and a bike was going by, you would have a person on a bike getting doored. So as a friendly driver and a friendly passenger in this instance, you would actually use your left hand to open your door. So if you just try this right now, if you find your left hand and you reach for your passenger door, notice how your view expands farther behind your shoulder, and you'd be allowed to have a full view if there was another vulnerable user approaching, and then avoid taking them out with your door as they're passing by. And the graphic on the right-hand side is showing that, say, the white car, where the possible dooring incident would be with the person on the bike if the person in the passenger side did not take a good look before opening. All right, we've got one more poll right here. What we're looking at is, this is a truck that is parked in the bike lane. So a private vehicle truck parked in the bike lane. My question to you is, let me go here, let me launch it. Is the person in the truck acting as a friendly driver? Amazing, great. Let's end that poll. That was nice and quick. Here's our results. You all did really good. Correct. So the one with the thing with this example is, yes, a private vehicle cannot park in a bike lane. The exception with this law is that if you're called upon by work or a duty of work, whether it's maybe fixing utility or doing a delivery, you are permitted to park in a bike lane. But if it's just personal necessity or personal efficiency to maybe run in and grab a quick coffee, that is not considered a friendly or legal, and you will not be doing that, because then the person on the bike is going to have to go around you, and that can possibly cause some dangerous situations that can be easily avoided. Next thing we're going to talk about is one of my favorite pieces of bike infrastructure, just because not everyone is aware of how to interact with this thing called the Sharrow. I've also heard it referred to as share arrow. The idea with this is it is located on narrow streets where you're sharing the road with the people on bikes but in the same lane versus being side by side, right? And so because the road is so narrow, it squeezes the users into this shared situation. So it's indicated with the double arrow lines with the bike. And as a friendly driver, what you can do is you're approaching a road that may be turning into a sharrow, anticipate that if there is a person on a bike, they will be merging into your lane, right? These are really great resources, or these are really great pieces of infrastructure because it really does help with the flow of traffic in some of these narrower roadways. It's really good for wayfinding and directional indicators. So they're actually quite beneficial to both you as a person driving and safer for a person on a bike. That gets us to, I believe it's our last poll. So what you're looking at is 2 people on bikes and 2 people driving. And my question to you now is gonna be a flip because I think it makes a little bit more sense to ask it like this. So my question to you is, oh look, I have 2 questions actually. Are the people biking using the sharrow correctly? And then the next poll question that there will be is, are the people driving using the roadway in a way that is friendly or not? Right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to share those results. So you can see that actually the 2 people that are on the bicycles are using the roadway correctly. You can have 2 side by side as long as those 2 people on the bikes are not impeding traffic or slowing things down. But because these are often on areas where the speed limits are quite slow, that this normally will definitely work. And the person driving is technically following at a safe speed because we're talking that this will be in areas where the speed limits will be lower. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Thank you for participating in those polls. We're going to move into the famous roundabouts. So these are really great pieces of infrastructure for the reason that a normal intersection, in a normal intersection, there's about 32 ways that there can be a crash with people walking and people on bicycles. But in a roundabout, there is only 4. So this, although it sometimes it's a bit of a learning curve, they really do help with the flow of traffic for all users. And as a person on a bike, or to anticipate how a person on a bike is going to be interacting with these, I'm going to give you the 2 ways that they will move through it. So as a driver, what you can anticipate seeing a person on a bike either entering into the roundabout, and I'll bring your attention to the graphic on the right-hand side. So either entering the roundabout and using it as if they were a person driving, and they will be in the center of the lane as a vehicle would be, and indicating a turn when they're ready to exit. So with a right-hand signal, just as you as a friendly driver would also signal as you are leaving a roundabout. The second way they'll interact with a roundabout is they may use the crosswalk. Once they enter the crosswalk, they're required to move with the flow of traffic and more so be treated as a person walking. So as a friendly driver, you will pay attention to people that are on bikes in the roundabout, and you will also notice the crosswalks to stop if there are other users using those crosswalks. One other piece that's important to note here in a roundabout is a person on a bike ideally will be in the center of the lane, and you would not pass them. Even if they're hugging the outer part of the lane, the right side, you will still not pass them, just like you would not be passing a car in a single lane roundabout. What we have here is a bike box, and these are not prevalent everywhere or many places, but as it is with a lot of general infrastructure discussion, it's really good to know what these look like and how to interact with them, because when you go to other places, you want to be able to drive responsibly and know how to use infrastructure, even if it's not commonly seen on your route where you go on a regular basis. The way a bike box works, it's used to group riders near the stop bar of an intersection. So you can see here in the photo, the riders would group here as the graphic on the right hand side indicates. It really does get people through an intersection more quickly and out of your way as a person driving, and it reduces conflict. So it kind of creates this really clear organization at an intersection. One thing to note here as a person driving, you're required to stop where it says wait here. Where it's not indicated as clearly, you'll stop behind the white line as if you would stop behind a white line at a stop sign. You cannot turn right on a red when there is a bike box. So you would have to wait for the light to turn green and for the people on bicycles to move through the intersection so that you can take that right-hand turn. Okay, so another use of green paint is called cross bikes. Again, they're a tool to help draw our attention that there's going to be other users present. So hey, there's going to be some bicycles, some people biking. So as a friendly driver, you want to be aware that might be what's you're going to be sharing the road with. Note that as soon as that person on the bike moves into the white paint as a crosswalk, they are actually become a person walking and then shift to having the laws that are applied to people walking. So that's why kind of when I indicated people on bicycles are almost always considered the same, having to be treated the same as people driving, but they can easily kind of switch roles. And so as a friendly driver, you want to anticipate anything that might happen like this. Okay, really briefly, we're going to go through some scenarios, and I'm going to explain how you can avoid them because you're a friendly driver. So a common thing that happens is squeeze by. So this is not allowing that fall distance. It's when you're passing a person on a bike. So you're looking at a picture with a person on a bike where there is no bike lane, and we'll say that the speed limit is over 35 miles an hour. The person driving really needs to wait until it's safe to cross over and give that person enough space. So this is a really common thing that happens. It makes the person on the bike feel really uncomfortable, and even that uncomfortableness could cause some hazardous cycling and a crash to result. Second most common, I think this was second on the list, is the right hook. So you can see here we've got the truck taking a right-hand turn, has not taken a good look to see if there was a person in the bike lane, and we end up with a crash that's very common with the person on the bike. And again, just a reminder, that person on the bike is just much more vulnerable, and it's not worth this kind of a crash. It really would ruin your day, could change the rest of your life, definitely would change the rest of the person on the bike's life. So best to avoid these and look for people on bikes as a Oregon-friendly driver. Similarly, taking a left-hand turn, a left cross, and in order to be a friendly driver, this truck, you as a driver, would wait until the person on the bike makes it across the intersection before taking that left-hand turn. So wrong way, left cross. Again, just re-emphasizing this pretty common scenario that has to do with wrong way riding. As an Oregon-friendly driver, you would not only just check to make sure the bike lane closest to you is clear, but you're going to look at all bike lanes. You're going to look at the sidewalks, the crosswalks, to really pay attention to see if there's anybody that may be crossing through that intersection from any side in any direction, so that you can avoid impacting that person on the bike, that person walking. So leaving the bike lane. So I hinted at this a bit when I was talking about infrastructure and infrastructure being compromised for the person on the bike. So often there could be, say, a recycling bin in the bike lane. There can be a rope that looks just like a snake, and the person on the bike may really quickly kind of freak out and want to leave the bike lane. Because when you're biking, things can kind of be deceiving as you're trying to kind of pay attention to things or everything around you. So as a friendly driver, you're not only going to watch for hand signals and indications from the person on the bike, but you're also going to look ahead and see if there are things that may be impeding the bike lane, and kind of anticipate that there could possibly be that person on the bike could be leaving the bike lane. And if you can anticipate that and slow down or make space, then you can avoid a really common and deadly crash. And then again, just like everything else, make it home at the end of the day just how you plan versus end up in the hospital tending to some serious damage. Impaired driving, basically it's just we don't do that because there is so many possibilities of crashes that it's just not something that anybody is going to do. So distracted driving. So distracted driving comes in many forms, and yes, it's absolutely against the law to be texting while driving, and it's a very dangerous thing for vulnerable users if you are distracted driving, but that also can come as messing with the stereo. You can have some internal mental distracted driving, and your thoughts could be wandering to the point where you're actually not even present driving. So you have a lot of power and responsibility behind the wheel, and the vulnerable users really depend on you to not be distracted in order for us all to end up making it home at the end of the day. What you're looking at here, someone's texting while a person on a bike is actually having to leave the bike lane because of some impediment in their bike lane. And without paying attention, the person driving can easily run right over that person on the bike. Speeding is also, the faster you go, the less time you have to react. So if the person is going to have to leave that bike lane and you're going faster than the speed limit, you're not going to be able to react very quickly, and there's a really good chance of there being a crash. I like to say here just that there's a lot of amazing, smart people that have set speed limits for a reason, and it's way easier just to kind of rely and lean on that as your guidance, and that way everyone tends to be taken care of on the roadways. So a little graphic to help embed that one is that many of us have seen this conceptually, and it's just really important to reinforce when it comes to speed that at 20 miles per hour, the chances of you actually killing the person that you hit is at 10%. Add 10 more miles per hour onto that, and the chances of that person dying is at 40%. And then add 10 more miles onto that, so about double the speed limit, 20 more miles over that original example, that person is 80% more likely to end up dead. So if you take nothing else from all of this, it's that if you can slow down, that is the ultimate goal and the ultimate achievement of the Oregon Friendly Driver. You can do all of these things with your eyes peeled wide open, anticipating people's actions, knowing that other lives do count, and taking your time to get to where you need to go. So that said, I haven't seen any questions come in to the question box, but if anybody has any questions, wants any clarification, I invite you to drop your questions into the Q&A, and I will happily respond. That said, if you have additional questions after this is over, you are more than welcome to contact me directly, and I'm happy to expand on anything. I'm not seeing anything come on. I'm going to keep that question box open and just kind of shift screens real quick here. I'm going to talk a little bit about next. Oh, I see a question in. Can pedestrians cross the road anywhere? That's a good question. So they can cross the road legally where there is a intersection, so two roads meeting where there's a corner. They cannot cross the road anywhere, so they would be considered crossing illegally if they were to cross at a place that wasn't, by definition, an intersection, or a corner where there'd be a marked or unmarked crosswalk. That said, the intent here is to keep people alive as organ friendly drivers. So similar to the person on the bike that was wrong way riding, they were actually breaking the law. But the goal is to try to go above and beyond that. And so if someone was crossing at a place that wasn't by definition an intersection, still as a friendly driver, you would stop and let them get across. Although it would be great if they were taking a better, safer crossing, if that makes sense, just to try to keep people alive. Yeah, you're welcome. And ultimately, like I hinted at with what I do in the Safe Routes to School program, is I go into schools and I teach young kids where to cross the road and how to safely interact in the roadways. As they grow up, things kind of start to fade, and our program is only so big. I really wish that I could be reinforcing this at all stages in life, but we're not quite there yet, but hopefully in the future these things can become more of an emphasis. And the next steps with this program is for you to take the post test. So we encourage you to take that post test. It really helps kind of anchor things into you, but it also helps us keep our program running. We offer this program for free. When we get those test results, we're able to kind of report on that and then keep on expanding and offering this to as many people as possible to make our roadways safer. So you can use that QR code. I'm going to drop in the comment box the URL that also can be used to access that post test. You will get a follow-up email in about an hour that also will direct you to that, but it's a little bit easier just to kind of go there right now. It's very quick. It's very similar to what you did in your pre-test. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way after this. Another resource that we have, if you did like this content or if you have an idea of some people that could really use it, we offer the Oregon Friendly Driver course online on demand. So anybody can go on to our website and actually take this whole course on their own time. It's a really great way to kind of get individuals to learn a little bit about this material. So please share that with anybody you think would be interested, or go ahead and if you want to take the course again, you can access it from our website. And then just if you continue, if you're curious about the next step to a little bit about this, is Ray Thomas offers a lot of really in-depth detail about what are really the legal rights of people on bicycles. And then the foundation for this, really from Oregon Department of Transportation, that as our funders, is really to try to end up with zero traffic deaths. And to explore that a little bit more, you can check out the Vision Zero. And then another piece is just the different ways that this programming material really affects different members of our communities, and the way you may, as a person driving, interact with the intersection versus people of other users, other cultures. And the BIPOC community also has a different way of interacting at an intersection. And there's just some really interesting material out there. You're welcome to check out these additional resources to kind of expand your awareness of the world that has to do with sharing the roadways with vulnerable users. All right, so that wraps up everything I have here. Like I mentioned, if you have any additional questions or comments, please feel free to email me. Love doing these live webinars. Happy to offer it again. So share this material with people. The more we can get it out there, the safer our roadways can be for everybody, and then everyone makes it home safely. So like I said, this has been brought to you funded by Oregon Department of Transportation, and I am from Commute Options. We put this together with the Street Trust and the Safe Lane Transportation Coalition. We do lots of other programs that have to do with really helping people get to where they need to go and providing increased access to some different and creative ways of transportation. So reach out if you'd like. Otherwise, I look forward to sharing the road with you all out there safely. Have a really great day.